Hello, and happy National Native Plant Month, everyone. If you have not heard, the Congress and Senate have proclaimed April to be National Native Plant Month across the United States. The Florida Native Plant Society has been celebrating Florida Native Plant Month in October every year, and we've been getting the Board of County Commissioners to make proclamations every October. But now we have April to add to our little calendar of Native Plant Month celebrations. So happy Native Plant Month. Don't forget, we do take comments and questions. We'll probably be taking them after the business agenda and then probably after the presentation this evening. But as soon as something occurs to you, go ahead and make your comment or put your question into the comment box and we will get to it. Our current membership is 126, and this will be our last broadcasted meeting for the spring before we take our summer break. We do want to thank you for sticking with us during our in-person hiatus, and we definitely look forward to being able to see everybody in the fall, so we're planning on that. Over the summer, we still will probably be having some activities going on with the chapter, and you can always follow us on Facebook. That stays current throughout the year. And speaking of Facebook, we will be having a Facebook contest coming up at this weekend, I think, with the prize being given away by Anson Nurseries. So tune into our Facebook page, follow us, and you'll get notifications about that. So this last month, we've been pretty busy, and a couple of the noteworthy events that have been going on, I would like to show you. We had mentioned in the Chronicle, our chapter members have been helping Fort Cooper State Park do native landscaping, and the Chronicle put an article in the paper talking about that and the installation of the plants. So we're happy to see more native plants going in landscapes across the county. And then for the Citrus County Fair, we had some entries in the Native Plant Division, and we got ribbons. So remember that the Citrus County Fair, the fair comes in March every year, but if you want to enter, you have to have plants at the end of the year in December and have them in your possession until March comes around. But I highly suggest that people start looking around their yard, or if they decide to start buying plants this spring, to consider what plant they might like to keep and then enter into the fair next year. It's fun, there's no cost, and you usually end up with a nice ribbon to take home. So as far as plants and things coming up, we have definitely made plans for a plant sale in the fall. We hope that everybody is we'll look forward to that, and we've done one of those before. We featured trees, since fall is a great time to plant trees. I think this year we'll be doing a regular pre-order plant sale like we usually hold in the spring, and hopefully we'll have volunteers available and lots of people interested in getting some plants for the cool season. And then since we're not doing our spring plant sale, we are doing a plant swap that's coming up at the end of this month, and we'll talk more about that because we have our list of activities. So what we have upcoming for April 14th is our plant walk at 2 Mile Prairie Tract. It's a little more than 2.5 mile loop, lots of different habitats. There's even a sinkhole pond that gets visited. It's near the Withlacoochee River, so there you could make a little side trip afterwards if you want. But to get on this trip, you do need to RSVP with Ben, our activities chairman. You can text him, or you can email him, or you can call him. He's very accommodating. So contact him about that. It was a very popular activity that we did during the May conference when it was held here a couple of years ago, and we think you'll enjoy it. Now on the 18th, between 1 and 3 is when we're having our plant and seed swap. It'll be held at the Pine Ridge Estates Community Center. There is a Facebook page, event page available on our Facebook account where you can post plants that you're looking for or post plants that you have available. So definitely go over there and check that out. We already have one post up. You can get a head start on your swapping by going to the Facebook page. Then on April 24th, we have 2 outreach presentations being held at Anson's Nursery's Earth Day party. They're going to be having refreshments and some food, and then we'll have 2 presentations, one on butterfly gardening and one on planting and maintenance of native plants. The master gardener should be there as well, so we're looking forward to that day. We do need some volunteers to staff the booth. We're just going to have real simple materials and friendly faces, so please, if you're available, contact us, and we'd love to have you hang out with us on the Earth Day party. Now, on the 21st or the 28th, depending on your availability, we are continuing our invasive plant removal project with Lake Beautyberry chapter, and we're removing, they just added this Good Neighbor Trail. It's a bike trail in Hernando County. They did a little sodding. They brought in some invasive plants, and the disturbance allowed some others to move in. It's not a big infestation, so if we get in now, we can just wipe them out, and now's the time. So if you want to get involved with that, please email lavonsilvernell@gmail.com. And then for May, we are having the FNPS conference, which is going virtual. Registration is open now. Go to the FNPS website and register for that. And then our own chapter's May meeting is traditionally a potluck picnic. We'll probably be doing potluck and brown bag, whichever you're more comfortable with, but that's coming up on May 22nd. We'll be sending an email out about that at the end of the month. So I do see that Kay has joined us. She's one of our volunteers that usually is out and about with the demo gardens, and I'd like to say hi to Kay. We haven't been able to see you in a long time, and we look forward to seeing you again, maybe at the potluck. So if there are no questions concerning any of the business, I will bring on our speaker. So our program tonight is on the rare and beautiful long-spurred mint, known only to exist in our neighboring Marion and Sumter counties. Nearly half of the populations are found on the Cross Florida Greenway, where our speaker has taken up the challenge of monitoring and advocating for this rare species as an FNPS project. Our speaker is the Marion County FNPS president, Deborah Curry. She's a 5th-generation Floridian with passionate ties to the land and is a lifelong plant lover. She earned a master's in biology, spending her career as a science teacher. As part of the Society's work to preserve endangered plants, she has spearheaded her chapter's project to ensure that this special mint has a continued presence while documenting their habitat needs and reproduction under difficult site conditions. So thank you for being with us tonight, Deborah Curry.
Thank you.
Hi, Deborah.
I hope everyone has a good time with this. This is virtual is harder.
But the nice thing is that it's virtual now, but if anybody is interested, they can make it in person real quick by volunteering to help you with your project.
And I have a couple of things to request at the end. So without any further ado, let us begin. What you see in the image right here is my long spur mint, the Dicerandra cornutissima. Now, I don't know if you can see it in this picture very well, but if you look at the tips of the anthers, when they're in certain soils, more like the sandhill than the scrub, the tips of the anthers are yellow, which is probably where corn came from, the cornutissima tips. The Dicerandra describes that they are knobby at the end. I learned last Friday. Hope you were able to catch the mint presentation. That was really good. And in the next slide,
did it advance?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, well then I'm gonna go back because it advanced for me.
Okay, now it's advancing. Okay, I just wanted you to know that right now I'm only going to talk about 2 of the habitats in Marion County. We pretty much have all of them that are listed on FNA that are in the Central Florida area. The sandhill will be first, and the sand pine scrub is the only one of the scrubs I'm going to talk about. There is a rosemary scrub, on the Greenway as well. I don't have images of that, and I haven't put that into PowerPoint presentation yet. It's coming. And the next slide. This is just to give heads up to a recent field trip that I took with Athena and I believe his name is Steve. We identified 20 or so really neat plants out on my sandhill. This is on the Cross Florida Greenway. This area that you're looking at right here has been burned twice in the last 4 years, 5 years. And it was burned last about 1 year ago. So when you look at some of the images, you'll see some of the burning, especially right in that, the right image, you can see that the sable, probably Etonia, has burn marks on it. It's coming out of it just fine, but it shows how recently they were burned. And we'll go on to the next slide. I got in really close. We didn't get to see the V, but it doesn't have any threads, and it is all underground. Those are the two major markers for the sable Etonia. And I think if you got really close, you could get the V separation, and it would be great. We also found Lupinus Pyrinis, which is the little sky blue lupine, has a single leaf, and it is blue. There's a large gopher tortoise hole next to it. In the right image around it, you can see the Arista stricta, the wiregrass. It was everywhere. And there was plenty of turkey oak. And one of my friends said that when the turkey oak is short like that, the deer can graze on it and keep it under control for us. So having the turkey oak under 3 or 4 feet so that the deer can graze on it really helps maintain the openness of the sandhill. It's really great. And the next slide. A few days ago, I went back to that area to take a look at some things that might be going now, and found 3 Asclepias. I think this one is the Asclepias virifolia, not positive though, and would love to have someone come out with me to take a look at it and help me identify some of the other things that I found along the way. It's just filled with lots of different plants that you don't get to see all the time. It's a really, really rich sandhill right now. And the next slide. We then moved up to the pine scrub, it's really a sand pine scrub, and it has the 3 oaks, the sands, live oak, and the Chapman oak, and the myrtle oak. All 3 of those, if you look in really good in this picture, you can find all 3 of those. This picture also shows, it's not really easy to see in this image, some of the Dicerandras that we found right away. They're in the front. There's a couple of them down below. I've got some closer pictures that you'll see. There's a Serona repens is everywhere in this habitat. And we're only uphill from the previous site, and we're within view of the sandhill site. This is just on the top of the hill, and hopefully it will stay dry and won't need to be burned. The scrubs are not, because of all the oaks, they don't burn as easily. The sand pines will flame up, and they just commit hara-kiri, but the oaks tend to make it a little bit less flammable. So the scrubs don't burn as often as the sandhills. They will be a little bit happier burning every 20 years. So they're going to find things on the scrub that you won't find down in the sandhill as often. You'll see reindeer moss and some other things that get destroyed in the fire and take a tremendous amount of time to return. So if anyone's going out to a fire and they're going to be watching it and you see reindeer moss, pick it up as fast as you can and then redistribute it when it's cooled, because they just don't do well. That's one of the things that we're learning from Archibald. And in the next slide, let me get caught up with you. One of the other projects that I am very diligently working on, I think behind this group, you can see that there is a paved trail. Oh, got to go back. The paved trail was put, you will see on, I believe, across all of the Dicerandras. My guess is that Marion County said it was for emergencies. Nobody has paved trails in the West. We have plenty of emergency vehicles able to get in. It's not a problem. The pavers in the Ross Prairie area, which is where we are, were a little bit more aggressive with the width of their trail. And as you can see behind this group, very, very dense Bahia seedlings. And they also, when they would see open sand, which is on the scrub, it's very open sand, they got very nervous about it and took rollers and seeded Bahia. So you'll see it in front of this group is an area that we have recovered. And this is adjacent to that recovery, and it is filled with Dicerandras. They are pointing out 3 or 4 different plants. They're wonderful. This Dicerandra has a very minty smell. You just rub your hand across the top and you get this marvelous mint all through the year. I've never seen it go down to where it's just not growing. It's not in flower right now. It won't be in flower until September. Keep an eye out. We usually have some field trips in September to see the Dicerandra in bloom, and the garbarias at the same time. There's tons of garbaria on this tract of land. So what we're going to be doing is every large lens along this trail, and there are 5 or 6 or 7 of them, I am hoping to get volunteers, and we have grants going, and we are going to replace some sandhill plants in them that we either get from Chiapinis, which is our close nursery, or Green Isles, which you probably know about. And then the next slide, I'm introducing you to our cornutissima, the Dicerandra cornutissima. From this one, you can see very easily the tips in the scrub. The tips seem to be white. I don't know why, but in the sandhill, the tips seem to be yellow. It's not as prevalent in this sandhill as it is in the scrub, and it hasn't recovered itself in the sandhills that have been burned recently. It's one of the pieces I'm keeping track of and watching for. So this is the northernmost Dicerandra of all of them, and there are a number. I think there's 11 species. That is a perennial. The ones to the north of us, along the Appalachians into Georgia, along the Panhandle, all are killed with the frost and have become annuals, or they were annuals to begin with, because they're an older variety. But the little islands that we had when this plant was moving south permitted them to live as a perennial because it didn't get very cold most winters. And even when it does get cold, the sandhill, the sand pines, and the oaks shield them and keep them from being frozen. They did not have any frost damage that I saw this last winter. And it was in the 20s most of the time this winter. We had many, many days where it was in the 20s up in this area. South of us, there are 8 or 10 different species of Dicerandra, and there may be more. We're finding them all the time. It is very localized. Apparently they were, they had time on islands to inbreed enough that they are separated. The test of separation is going on at Bok Tower, where all of them are hopefully still alive. The last time I looked, they looked like they were all alive. They have collected most of the southern Florida Dicerandras, and they have their demonstration scrub garden. And that's what I know about that at this point. And the next slide, excuse me. This was what started it. Marion County had Adele Mills in the middle of this come in, and I wanted to do a research project when I came to Marion County in 2018, and so followed her to the Marie Harris Carr Cross Florida Greenway, and fell in love with this plant. It was already endangered US and endangered Marion County, so it had a lot of reason to be studied and looked at, and it was in everybody's notes about what was going on, but no one knew very much about this plant in particular. Adele is standing in front of about 250 plants that we saw when we were working on a bicycle path, trying to get it so that it was not going to be bothered by or bothering the Dicerandras themselves. We just spotted it in bloom. And when we walked around and found this, we were totally amazed. And I just stopped and counted all of them. And they had just recently had the sand pines removed to try to turn this back into a sand hill, reclaiming it as a sand hill area. That has not been totally successful at this time, but they're trying to recover some of the sand hill along this greenway as much as possible. The evidence is that there was a lot of sand hills along here. So they are putting in longleaf pine and selling off the sand pines. When the sand pines were gone, many of these plants were apparently all the same age and very large. And there were not a lot of young plants coming in. That has since changed. But that's what we're learning, is how the recovery is happening as there are the different oaks coming in and some of the pines are coming in. They're getting a little bit more shade, and we're getting new plants. And this is going to be the second year of our information about how the plants are doing in terms of their size, reproductive ability, and recoverability. So that's what we're learning. But this was just a glorious photo of pink everywhere. As far as you can see, all the way back to those trees is pink with this shrub. It's just amazing. So the next picture. This is the greenway. Now, I'm not going to be able to point. So you see a couple of areas along the middle of the greenway where it looks a little bit like a dragon's foot. That is Santos. The Santos does not have a connection. So you can see the connection is broken where that looks like a fin. Yeah, right there. That's the Santos connection. And I was thinking they were supposed to be putting an underpass there so that it would be continuous, but it looks like all they're going to do is 6-lane that road and make it wider. So as you go to the west from there, you can see a very small little tick that looks like keep going a little bit more, right there. That tick right there is called the triangle. And that part on the top of that little tick is running along the edge of I-75. There used to be Dicerandras on I-75. I have seen at 60 miles an hour some of them, but I have not walked that yet. It's one of my to-do lists. That triangle, however, does not have bikers on it. It does have people walking, and so it's very slightly used. And that's where one half of our collections and transects are being created. We're looking at what happens when they do get a chance to burn the oaks, to see what happens if the Dicerandra is improved with that treatment, or what happens. The triangle currently is being managed to improve the scrub jay habitat, which is very compatible with Dicerandra, so that it works for both of them. The scrub jay populations there are extraordinary. I have them crawling in my car when I stop and do any of the research, because I eat nuts for lunch and they like nuts. So they just go in my car and look for nuts and try to find things. It is just incredible. And as you go west from there, you'll see a little line in the middle of it. And that's between those two spots right there is where the picture is that you see, that you saw in the last image. It's when you look at the greenway, you'll see white patches. And those white patches are the places where you can find the Dicerandra. All along 484, which starts at that little triangular tick and goes all the way out to Dunnellon, and probably all the way to you in Citrus County. 484 was always the marker for this plant. So it's down in Marion Oaks and it's out towards Dunnellon. I have not looked past Dunnellon, but I'm going to bet that there might be some of it a little bit past Dunnellon, but that's its marker. And it has a strong population there. We could not find it in Sumter County, although we're working with Sumter County now in our little inserts. So I will be down at Lake Poniatowski soon and take a look and see if I can find it, because I'm pretty good at finding it. So in the next slide, you're going to see a couple of new pictures of the Dicerandra blooming. This last year, those blooms were successfully fertilized. There's a bee fly, or fly bee, I think it's a bee fly, that is supposed to be the major pollinator. I didn't see that bee fly. I did see that bee fly when I was down at Archbald looking at and learning how to do the field work. I saw bumblebees up in our area. So somewhere between all of those, we had excellent seed production this last year. So I was able to take those seeds and move them into all of the restoration areas, and hopefully they'll get planted with the Dicerandra soon. And in the next slide, you'll see some of the questions that I put together on a piece of paper when I was listening to Adele talk about what was going on the Greenway. You have to understand, she's the biologist on 110 miles of Greenway, and she's the only biologist. She has some people that help her, but the crew that they have is really and truly a skeleton crew. So anything that gets done is by those passionate volunteers, like the person that's speaking to you. The things that we do know is that it is a strongly aromatic plant, grows to 1.6 or 5 feet tall, which is how it was described in their original work. It has erect, non-woody flowering shoots, and it grows from a woody base, which I have found is able to root on the branches. It doesn't do it very well and doesn't do it very often, but there are certain conditions where the soil is loose enough that it will root as a rhizome. Now, by the time you get to the summer when it's flowering, the branches that have connected that rhizome to the mother plant are gone. So you don't see that connection remain, but I did in January find connections that were rooted along there, just following them out, which is different from all of the other perennial Dicerandras. So that's going to be something that's fun to uncover and to check out. And if that's true, it might be possible for Green Isles to take the Dicerandras and get them to root and to repot them. We didn't know how long a plant can live. We're not sure of the pollinators. I'm not out there often enough at this time because of other responsibilities to be able to look for pollinators, but it's one of the things that I will answer before everything's all done. The seeds are mostly, it appears to be distributed downhill. So by rain or maybe just being disturbed by animals as they walk by, they don't seem to go very far. Adele had placed a number of plants that she was able to rescue from the building at the very, very beginning, probably in 2017, 2016. And when I walked across the area where she had rescued these plants in 2018, I could see that there were mother plants at the top of hills, and they had baby plants, smaller plants that were variously aged, some of them reproductive, downhill from them. So that is probably the major way that they're, besides having Deborah Curry take the seeds and throw them all over the restitution areas, which probably is not real natural, so we won't include it. I'm not sure how fire does with these plants. 8 to 30 years was the interval given at FNA for the scrub, especially inland scrubs. The margins, the scrubs that you have over on the coast are going to be burned more often. I know that when I worked at Oscar Shear and did the talks, we had that scrub burning every 4 or 5 years. I don't remember seeing Dicerandra in that scrub, so I can't wait to go back and take a look and see if it's there. But I spent 3 full years out in that scrub almost every Sunday, so I got to see what happened when they roller chopped it and burned it, and how that recovered, and the scrub jays loved it, and so that was the major population that was being worked on. Juliet Reiner has been helping me. I'm not great at writing. I'm improving, but she helped me get the first couple of grants for the restoration that you saw a little bit of earlier. And now you're going to look at the next slide. I believe this is an old picture of the Ross Perry path that was the major path. It could very well be that it's the bike path that's currently going, but I think this is one of the older paths. The bike paths that are going right now pretty much have pine, scrub pines everywhere. The sand pines are growing all along all of the paths where these are, and I don't see any the sand pines here. And so I have to imagine that they put a 12-foot blacktop path all across this, and I'm sure that they, in fact, did cover up a bunch of these. And I moved into Marion County at the time that they were putting the blacktop down, so I did not know that we could have gone up there and rescued them. I would have been there in a heartbeat, but it was not an option. It was paved before I ever walked out on it. So I never got to see this. My group did get to see this. They spent a lot of time up there. They covered it. They did a lot of things to preserve these wonderful plants. And now I'm helping to take the torch forward and preserve them again. In the next slide, you get to see the triangle itself close up. Those lines along there are the break points for fires. The green star is one of our transects. There's another one if you go west and into the next track up. we have you can see that it's a little bit open. That's one of the tracks the requirements for being in line with Archibald and their program for studying Dicerandra, I just wanted to follow them, was that you needed to find 200 plants to begin with, and they had to be 25 square meter transects. So I have meter tapes left over from when I was a teacher, and they were 30 meters long. So I was able to do 25-meter linear transects, and that's only one side, or 5x5 transects, 5 meters by 5 meters, and there are cubic little squares. Either of those would work. It had to be 25 square meters. And so we have a total of 9 of these. 6 of them, I guess we have 12 of these. 6 of them are on the Greenway. No, I guess we have 9, because only 3 more are out at the scrub prairie, the Ross Prairie. The area that is adjacent to the west of this, that line there is I-75. The area to the west of this triangle is filled with Dicerandras. If you see little openings in the sand and not houses on them, you'll find Dicerandras. Most of the houses have put in solid bahia. And I'd like to have something to give them, so I can't wait for our the brochure that we're working on as a group to come out, so that I can hand this to all of those neighbors and maybe have a town meeting and tell them about these neat plants that they could have in their yard that are really nice shrubs. They live a fairly long time and replace themselves, and are a lot less work to do than all the yards that they're working on, because that sandhill and scrub is very difficult to keep in bahia. It doesn't like it. It likes it wet all the time, so you have to water it. It is mostly from Puerto Rico. It's from various areas, but the major bahia came in from Puerto Rico. They have water all the time. It rains every day. So, that's what it needs, is water all the time. We don't get rain every day here. We're going to have a May dry here and shortly, and then we have a September dry, and that's just the way it is on the sandhill. It's a tough life. The next picture will show you, and I'm sorry it's not very bright. This is the restoration that we have gone through. This is we had various drills and post hole diggers, and we had mostly 1-gallon plants, and there were 2,000 of them that we poked into 2 sites that are about the size that you're looking at. And in general, because we were planting in June and July, which is really a gruesome time to do that because it's very hot, but some of us are out there being gardeners, every plant has lived. Now, Athena now has the list of plants that we put in, because it's underneath in the notes of this slide. And there are pogons and honeycombs and green eyes, the chafe heads, Florida paintbrush, tall elephant's foot, garbaria, gopher apple, Faye's palafox, the many flowered beard tongues I just took pictures of, but I haven't got it uploaded yet. They are all in flower right now. The narrowleaf silkgrass, Canadian goldenrod, lopsided Indian grass, and the Adam's needles are starting to flower. The ones that we put in, it is exciting. When we went back to try to kill the bahia, obviously we didn't do a great job. You can see it, but when we went in, I covered all of the shrubs that were starting to grow in this site. including about 5 or 6 large pawpaws, and there was some Adam's needles, the yucca that were in there. I covered them with plastic and sprayed around them, and the yuccas are starting to bloom, and the pawpaws, where the large flowered pawpaws, are in flower at this time. So this slide is to help think about maybe coming and joining us this summer when I ask for helpers. And some of you just can't do the summer. It's fine. But if you're able to get out and do work in the summer, come and join us. It's very fun. It's so rewarding to see this come to life and suddenly go from a huge patch of bahia. You can see how large this is, 1/3 of an acre. A huge patch of bahia back into the scrub that it should be. And in the next slide, how am I doing on time? Pretty good. We place the transects according to the rules. And so behind me, most of those largest plants died. They may naturally die at that size. They were huge. They were 3 foot across, 1.5 feet tall. They were at their maturity. They were big plants. So what we're doing now is looking to see what the average length of life is for these plants. The Dicerandras they have at Archibald live 3 to 4 years. So we'll just see what we've got here. I have a feeling that they're a little bit longer. That site now has shrubs coming up, some sand pines coming up, a few longleafs that they tried to plant and will probably plant again, and the turkey oak, things that you would expect on a scrub, and in the sandhill. So we'll see which way it goes. We were able to find 3 transects. They had to be square in size and shape, where we could find 100 plants. So the 250 plants that we started with really shrank down. But as I said, they were pretty much every one of them. You can see that they're all about the same size. There were very few recruits coming in that population. Now that has changed. There are recruits. It is starting to look like it's going to regenerate and be a healthy population. So that's really good. So we measured the height, how many branches are on each of those little plants. The plants that I'm standing right next to have approximately 150 to 200 branches. A 2 centimeter section is a branch. So it's a tedious counting. How many fertile branches are present? So each one of those streams that have the flowers on them, you count all of those. And those large plants were in the order of 250 to 300 fertile and non-fertile branches. So they were large plants. Now there are some of the younger ones. It's very exciting to hear about and to find. The next slide. This is what they look like. At this point, I'm trying to think about how to evaluate what's happening. I don't know if I want to let the ones on the triangle get shaded in by the oaks, or if I want to physically remove the shadowing and shading plants. But each of those little round dots is a number, and each of those little round dots represents a plant. So that big plant has underneath of it, on the left is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little plants underneath of it. And the one to the right, there are a number of little plants also underneath that large plant. They're separated. You have to go in and look at each one of those separated. So what we're seeing is some recruitment and new plants coming in. Very, very exciting for this population, I have to tell you. Let me see. And the next slide is not the last, it's the next last. This is to show you what it looks like. We have the tag on the top of a flag. Then you can see that there's blue behind that flag. And that is the plant. That little plant has 1 or 2 fertile pieces on it and a number of little parts. So each 2-centimeter branch is what we count. And as I said, I'm very, very happy that in the last counting, we had many, many recruits coming in, more than from the first one. I don't have all the numbers yet. I'm still looking at the data and making sure that all of the numbers are correct. We did a couple of field checks, and I've got a couple more to do to be sure of the data. And the last slide is a little information. Most of this came from Florida Native Plant Society data, and a huge portion of it is from the FNA, the Florida Native Area Inventory. I've also read all of the research papers of everybody about all of the Dicerandras. If you want those pieces, I can give those to you. But there's a lot of really good research looking at the genetics of the Dicerandras, which is where that information came from. So that's what I know. And if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. I hope that there's a little bit of time for that.
There's time. And earlier we had Sue, our co-president of the chapter, want to say hello.
And, thanks.
And thank you for being here. So I've got some questions. Gail Taylor has written down a couple of questions. I'll start with Gail. And anybody else who has questions, type them in. Yeah, Gail's first question is, why remove the sand pines to install longleaf pines? Are there advantages or disadvantages of leaving sand pines?
Well, I have a feeling, it's just a feeling. One, sand pines commit hara-kiri when they get on fire, and they make a very hot fire, and it's very difficult to maintain. So the longleaf pines don't do that. They tend to clean the bottoms off and get rid of all of the vines when you burn, and that's why they try to do it every 1 to 3 years. And they can have a quiet burn go through, and it doesn't do all of the hara-kiri. Now on the scrub with the sand pines, you don't have the fires as often, and one of the things that happens is you get the fire near a sand pine and it will just flash up in front of you. It's very, very, very volatile. You don't want one in your yard. I'm going to guess that because of the maintenance problem of having as much scrub as they did at the very beginning, and the proximity to houses, this stretch of 110 miles of path is only at the widest place, which is where we're looking in the Ross Prairie. It's 2 miles wide there. Most of the time, it's less than a half of a mile wide. It's got people living on either side of it. So having scrub near where you have people is a little bit risky. So I'm going to guess that part of what they're doing is maintaining it so that it's a little safer. The Dicerandra can live in the sand on the sand hill. They are not as happy with it, and I don't know what the reproductive system is going to be yet. I'm watching that, but I'm going to guess that some of it is just safety issues. When you're over in Ocala, I don't think they're doing that as much, and they can leave this. There are wonderful scrubs over there. The largest rosemary scrub I have ever seen is over there. It's hard to get to, but it's just dramatic. And nobody's going to be messing with that. They're going to be leaving the sand pines in. But that is going to be my guess as to one of the things that's going on.
And imagine the difference in light patterns would affect the growth of the Dicerandra as well.
The Dicerandra really likes sand pines. It has more diffuse light. It lets a lot more light through. It's just that really, I know that it really prefers that.
Yeah, and the needles are smaller, so they fall to the ground more instead of thatching kind of over everything.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was wondering, have there been any thoughts as to why this species is so restricted to Marion County and possibly Sumter, if it's still there or not?
I took the slide off, but I have a slide that shows Florida. And when Florida was emerging from the ocean, okay, you got to think back to Florida coming up from the ocean. So the places where it's 100 feet above water, which is over there in the Ross Prairie. My house is only 65 feet above water. It would have been, tidal. It made about 8 little islands all along the Lake Wales Ridge. And the Lake Wales Ridge was like an isthmus. So you're going to have up and down and up and down. If you go around Dundee, where Juliet lives, there are some huge hills, which were probably islands. And then around it are all of it slopes down into, the water, and it may be at the lowest tide you could walk across them. But in general, they're separated by water. And they're not only separated by water, they're separated by salt water, which is not something this plant is going to like at all. It's going to only like the regular fresh water that it got. When it's coming out of the water, you're going to be an island. So it gets rain every day. It had a wonderful life. But they were separated by islands. Now, birds can move them, but they're not going to move them very fast. It's not a very good seed to grab a hold of a bird's foot. Birds aren't going to be interested in this seed very much. Maybe, it's a very small seed. Little teeny birds would like it, warblers, but anybody bigger that would be able to take across the water is not going to be interested in this baby little seed. Mint seeds are tiny. They're not going to move with birds.
Unless those bigger birds are eating the little birds.
No, but by the time you do that, you're not going to have the seed's not going to make it.
Okay.
It's only going to make it if it gets stuck on it, because I think that if it goes through the gullet, it's going to die.
Okay. So Gail also wanted to know if you're collecting seeds and doing propagation. I believe she means like cultivated propagation, not
yet, but I'm checking in with Mark. He's working on the Dicerandra, one of the other ones. I think it was Chris Monty. Anyway, it's one that he was able to collect, and I know that they were working on it, and they were maybe going to be able to sell it this year. It's going to, it's a hardy little mint. As soon as you figure out what it is it needs, it grows just great out there on the scrub. I'm sure you have to have sand, and I'm sure you have to have something else. And I'm not sure if it's going to need, a piece of charcoal so that it feels like it did get burned and it changes the pH some. I'm not sure what it's going to need other than that.
And they're looking into that.
Yeah. Right now, I'm just hoping that taking fresh seed and moving them into the area that's adjacent will work for them.
And Mark is doing that under permit with the state.
Oh yeah. And also Bach Tower is doing the same thing. I don't know that they were trying to propagate. Mark is propagating one of the Dicerandras at this time. I don't know which one.
Now I was kind of wondering, the Ross Prairie and the Greenway are recipient sites for rescues if they happen. Are the villages and on top of the world communities, are they kind of a hazard for the populations, or do you think that they're
I'm
just
going to
so,
guess that On Top of the World has decimated the Sumter County things because they took all the prairie out. It's almost all houses now. You can see the edge of the Lake Pontotoski, and you can see the edges of every one of the sites that are claimed for parks, and everything else is turning into villages.
so they probably were in that area, but there's no way to know.
Yeah.
Now,
And
Sue,
I haven't started looking around. When I get onto one of the sites with a good Google map, and that's all I really need is a good Google map. I can find the areas that they might be present. Maybe we'll find them.
but there might be potential rescues happening at later dates too that you would need help with.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping that the people in the neighborhood next to the triangle will permit me to rescue plants officially.
Are there any other recipient sites in Marion County or Sumter County that would be able to take them, or is it kind of they have to go to locations that they're already known to have been in?
The Dicerandra is picky. I haven't seen it anywhere except along 484. It's in Marion Oaks, south of 484. And it's along the 484, but I don't see it over in Lake Weir. It's a different kind of a sand there. And so I haven't seen it over there. That's where the Waria is located. I don't see the Waria over here where the Dicerandras are. So they're picky about where they live.
Now, Sue had a question. She said you mentioned the plants that the Dicerandra are often found growing with. What plants are those?
Well, all right, let me get my list so that I do it right, because I think I've been under COVID for such a long time that things are just not quick.
I know with some of the milkweeds that go ahead.
The palafox and the Phaya. Who's that Phaya? Let me get the list.
I was going to say, I know with some of the milkweeds, the companion plants are usually very good indicators that you would find it. And with those, they can be very small, so it's kind of hard to see them sometimes. So you look for those companion plants.
Oh, okay.
This project is really fascinating, all the different details that go on that you've been working with and trying to determine. I've enjoyed both my outings over there for both the plant scouting and then also the restoration that we did.
It's just an exciting area, and every time I get to come out with some of you guys that know the botany much better than I do, it's just been just wonderful. It's extremely rich. Everything that I've run across in the area that I'm in, and it's kind of a restricted area, but it's along 484, has just been incredibly rich. Let's see, the Clitoria fragrans I've seen out there, which is the scrub pigeon wing. It's one of those butterfly-looking vines. It's a legume, and it is a huge blue butterfly-looking vine, and they are everywhere out there.
Yeah, they're about $50 sized.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating. I haven't seen that. We're looking for, there's a wild indigo baptisia that we're looking for. There's a number of things that we're looking for. Let's see. Who else
I know
is
on our last trip we were looking for giant orchid.
We were, and I'm still looking for giant orchid. And I'm looking for the little sticky pod, the Matea. It said that the Matea should be out there. I have Matea growing on my fence in my yard, so I know that it grows around, at least in my part of the Ocala forest. I don't know that it's down in that area, but they said that it should be there. I'm hoping I can see it. Let's see who else is out here. Well, you saw the wiregrass. That was pretty easy to spot. And there's supposed to be a dwarf huckleberry that I haven't been able to find yet. The sparkleberry was everywhere when we were out. That was really fun. But the companion plant, I'm not coming in on. Let me see if I can come in on the companion plant. It's just my brain isn't working very well. Sorry about that part. Let's see.
I know the last time that on our last trip out there that we found that new little population that was situated in between the, we weren't sure if it was flatwood plum or Chickasaw plum and the hawthorn. So it was gaps between these small shrubby trees kind of situation. They do seem to be specializing in gaps from what I recall.
Yeah, well, and they, on the triangle, they grow in the middle of the road. It's all sand road, and they really like a bit of disturbance, really loose sand that doesn't have anything else growing around it. It's just terrifying to try to drive along there because you're trying desperately to not run into them. And there's a little Baya plant, the Farewell to Summer.
That's Dahlia.
What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Dahlia Faya. Yeah, thanks. The Dahlia Faya is what I consider its companion plant. It's a mint, or it's a legume. And whenever I find the Dahlia Faya, I can often find the Dicerandra. Now, the Garbaria grows all over it, but I haven't seen the Dicerandra always with the Garbaria, but I find it really often with the Dahlia Faya. Thanks.
So maybe it's benefiting from a little nitrogen fixation.
Might, you know, that's a pretty desperate place out there to live. You happen to be a mint. So, yeah.
Well,
Yes.
that was the last question that we had, but I do look forward to hearing more updates on activities that you're going to be holding out there, and I always try to share them with our members. It's really nice to go visit the site. So any excuse, even if it's volunteering, is a nice opportunity to go out.
Well, this June, Juliet is looking at, and if she can't find the money, I think we're just going to drag it out of my funds because we have a little bit of money. We want to, they roller chopped. It wasn't a roller chop. They mowed. And the mower is this plastic flat sheet that doesn't really expose a lot of dirt, but it did open it up more than I really wanted to see. When they took the sand pines out, when I started in 2018, they had loading platforms to load the trees onto the semi trucks, and those loading platforms were burned. Those loading platforms were full of pine cones from the sand pines. And so what we got from that was a lawn of sand pines, a thick lawn of sand pines. So thick you couldn't walk through it very easily. And Juliet and I were thinking that if we asked for volunteers to come in with some small hand tools to cut them, and remove them. They only have a base diameter of 3 inches. And if you cut a sand pine to the ground, at the ground, you've killed it. So, you know, I thought that maybe they could give them away for Christmas trees, but that sounded too extreme for everybody, especially in the middle of COVID. But so they mowed them. Most of the areas that I've looked at that they mowed are okay. 2 of the areas have developed Kogan. I haven't been back yet to see how the Rosia natal grass is coming along. It had really moved into the Dicerandra area, and they grow together really easily. The Kogan just overcomes it, and it will die because it just shades it out. But the natal grass can grow in the middle of it for a while until it gets too thick. So we'll probably have a plant removal going on late May, and we're going to plant do a restoration, 2 restorations in June or July. So watch for those. Those will come along.
Okay. And depending weather and all of that, the Lake Beautyberry project that our chapter is working with on the Good Neighbor Trail, I know their removal days are late in the month. So if you might move it to like maybe even early June, then you might get like Beautyberry chapter.
Well, yeah, I'm working with Beautyberry right now. We're doing our inserts together. So we'll be talking.
Excellent.
I'll make sure that we coordinate.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, I just have to go look at it and go, know that we need to get rid of it.
Oh, so you're supposed to make the invasive plants make that face.
I wish I could, but right now in my backyard, I am mowing and hand pulling Kogan grass. I have about a solid third of an acre back there. But I have too many fruit trees to use any poison on it, and I just don't want poison in my yard. So pulling and mowing will have to do. Linda Duber says that pulling and mowing will work, but you have to keep it up consistently for about 5 years.
And intensively.
When that blade gets more than about 2 inches tall, which is sometimes less than a week, you got to shoot it down again.
Yeah. There's more than one way to skin an invasive plant.
Yeah. Some of them are a little bit more arduous than others.
But so are we. All right. Well, thank you so much, Deborah. It's been a pleasure having you join us tonight. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Oh, yes. We will keep in touch. Thank you.
Good night. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. And like I said, this will be our last broadcast meeting for the spring. And I hope you have enjoyed having us have these online meetings. And we look forward to seeing you soon, too. Good night, everyone.